Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 275, the Special Interest Alien Reporting Act of 2024. The bill was circulated in advance and printed copies are available. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 275, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia, to require the Secretary of Homeland Security to publish on a monthly basis the number of special interest aliens encountered attempting to unlawfully enter the United States and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with and it's considered read and open to amendment at any point. I now recognize Ms. Greene for the purpose of offering an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will report the amendment in the nature of the substitute.
An amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 275, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Without objection, the reading is dispensed with and the amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered base text for the purpose of further amendment. The gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes on her amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Biden administration created one of the most damaging national security threats our country has ever faced. They allowed over 12 million illegals from over 170 countries and territories to break our laws, invade our country, rape our women and children, and murder our own people. Now Democrats are fighting against the Trump administration, fighting against deportations of people who broke our laws, who are members of the cartel, and they're protesting every single day for these cartel members to be brought back in America, which is a national security risk. 2 million of these illegals that the Biden administration and Democrats welcomed into the country are known gotaways who completely evaded U.S. authorities and are roaming the interior of the United States. Included in these 12 million are special interest aliens, also known as SIAs. Special interest aliens are individuals who pose a potential national security risk to the United States, typically from a nation that promotes terrorist activity or harbors terrorists. Under the Biden-Harris administration, there were at least 1.7 million special interest aliens from 26 countries encountered at our border. This does not include the potential SIAs among the 2 million known gotaways. I say at least because the true scope of how many SIAs remains largely unknown, since DHS is not required to disclose this critical information publicly. The American people deserve to know how many potential terrorists are coming across the border and which countries they are from, which is exactly what my bill does. And I can't imagine how anybody across the aisle can even argue with this. According to the former Chief Border Patrol agent of the San Diego sector, prior to the Biden-Harris administration, the sector averaged only 10 to 15 SIAs arrests per year. He testified, once word was out that the border was far easier to cross, San Diego went to over 100 SIAs in 2022, well over that in 2023, and even more that this year. And that's the ones that they knew of. The number of special interest aliens skyrocketed over the last 4 years, and even more egregiously, the Biden administration tried to cover it up. The administration of Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and Secretary Mayorkas, impeached by the House, by the way, told the Chief's Border Patrol agent of the San Diego sector that he was prohibited from releasing any of this information on the increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests at the time. That's unbelievable. The administration tried to convince the public that there was no threat at the border. They were complicit in covering up the invasion at our border. The American people deserve to know the number of potential terrorists Kamala Harris and Joe Biden allowed to come in the United States. They also deserve to know the numbers under the Trump administration to see a president who cares about the American people secure the border. That is why I'm urging the support for my legislation, which would require DHS to publicly release information each month on the number of SIA encounters, as well as countries of origin. Thankfully, President Trump has secured our border and restored our nation's sovereignty. Given the number of border crossings is down 94% Border crossings are down 94%, down to the lowest monthly levels ever recorded. I have no doubt that under his leadership, SIA encounters will cease if they haven't already. I encourage my colleagues to support this bill. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady yields. Would anyone care to comment on the amendment? I recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I oppose H.R. 275, the Tipping Off Terrorist Act, because it would provide terrorists, cartels, and other bad actors with real-time information about who's getting additional screening at our borders. It would essentially give them the inside track every month on DHS's screening practices, and focus, since it is considered special interest, shifts regularly according to the threat landscape. Democrats went to San Diego. We heard from the professionals last weekend about many of these issues. And one of the things we did learn is their protocols need to be kept a secret in order to be effective. So if we're going to publish these special interest aliens, then that tells cartels how they need to move people from other countries to here. So, Mr. Chairman, these bad actors could then attempt to circumvent enhanced screening critical to the keeping of our nation's safety. This would make our communities less safe. House Democrats do not oppose increased transparency about encounters along our borders. However, we believe that DHS shouldn't release data that puts our national security at risk. Therefore, I encourage Representative Greene and my Republican colleagues to work with the Trump administration to determine what information can be safely published without putting national security at risk. The Trump administration can and should then publish that information. But for us to require that by law, they can do it already right now. So I encourage you to use your influence with the administration to publish certain information, but that information should not damage national security like the current law is proposed. At any time, the Trump administration can choose to publish the data it wants. I urge my colleagues to vote against this unnecessary measure that jeopardizes Homeland Security. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Would anyone else care to make comments? Mr. Crayer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me thank my colleague from Georgia for this legislation. I share with you our common concern about terrorism attacking our country, putting our citizens in harm's way. I think the job our agents have, DHS, of finding terrorists is like finding a needle in a haystack. It's an impossible job, but they've got to do it. I remember here, when I first got here, our first Secretary of Homeland Security was General Kelly, who testified in front of us. And he would often say that border security does not end or begin at the border. It just, a lot of other things go into border security. And we would usually talk about things, for example, a travel manifest that is shared with us from other countries like Brazil, knowing who is coming into our hemisphere and who to watch out for. Subsequent to that, I've been working on this issue. I've had the opportunity to go to our targeting center right outside of Washington, D.C., to talk to the folks that actually follow terrorists. And it's interesting because they're working with limited resources, yet they're following people that may have been on a terror list from Colombia 50 years ago, when Colombia had a civil war. Under that category, President Petros is considered a terrorist. We want to focus on individuals that we know will do us harm. The other comment I found later on or have heard at the border is that if you're a real serious terrorist, you're probably not going to walk across the border. You're going to fly into the U.S., which is exactly what happened in 9/11. Those terrorists were here legally. I share with you, my colleague from Georgia, our interest in making sure the homeland is secure. I want to make sure we focus on the issues like giving our targeting center more resources, coordinate more of our knowledge and information with our allies around the world. After all, we got to make sure that the other side does not scorn us at all. Any successful attack on the homeland would be tragic for all of us. Appreciate your effort. I will not be supporting you today, but I look forward to working with you and coming up with a solution to this issue, which is of interest to all of us. Mr. Chairman, thank you. I yield.
Gentleman yields. I yield myself 5 minutes for a few comments and questions, and I actually am going to yield to Ms. Greene but I want to ask a couple of questions. As I understand it from looking at your bill, this just publishes the numbers, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So I'll reclaim my time. Does it report any protocols on how these gentlemen or women that are on this list are questioned? No?
No.
Is it any protocols on how they're identified and detained?
No,
Okay. So it just publishes the pure numbers. Is that correct? Just making sure.
just tells the American people how many SIAs have come into the country.
Does it report their names?
No.
Okay. All right. I yield. Is there anybody else who wants to make a comment about this? Mr. Goldman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's actually a lot of ground for common bipartisan effort here. I can assure all of my colleagues that the immigration issue is top of mind, that Democrats are very concerned about whether there are convicted criminals who remain in this country, and because of our immigration laws, including the fact that a country has to be willing to take someone who is removed in order for that person to be removed. There certainly are lots of things that we can address here. Our national security is at a very perilous point. The fact that we are seeing such egregious breaches of security clearance, classified information that warrant members of governments of other countries to start to say they're going to reevaluate their intelligence sharing with us should give everyone in this room serious pause about how we are tackling national security. Now, publishing the number of SIAs, it may be nice for to talk about. It may certainly, the transparency is something that we support, but it does nothing to ultimately secure our homeland. And I wish we were spending a lot more time on efforts to shore up our classified information, to shore up our relationships with our allies who provide us with intelligence information so that we can stop a terrorist attack, a real terrorist attack, not a terrorist attack based on alleged accusations of terrorism by members of this committee or members of the White House. You see, you aren't actually a terrorist just because a member of Congress from Georgia says you are. There actually has to be evidence provided to support that. That's how our country works. That's how due process works. That's how the rule of law works. Is the president doesn't get to determine that someone is or is not a terrorist. Members of Congress don't get to determine whether someone is or is not a terrorist. But that does not seem to be something that some of my colleagues understand. There's a reason why we have due process in this country, and you may think that due process is not warranted for someone who is not a citizen of this country, Or you may think that due process is not warranted for someone who's accused of being a member of a Venezuelan gang or terrorist organization. But once you start going down that slippery slope, then our basic foundations of due process come undone entirely. And I don't understand what the problem is with allowing a neutral arbiter based on evidence to determine whether someone is a terrorist or not. What is the objection that this administration has to presenting evidence to a judge to say, this is the evidence that this person is a member of a particular cartel? What we've seen in one particular case that is top of mind right now is that there's a confidential informant who has said that someone was a member of a foreign gang, a foreign terrorist organization now designated, and that he wore a particular type of baseball hat. There's no corroboration. There's nothing else to corroborate or to confirm what that confidential informant says, at least that has been presented. And I know there are some lawyers on the other side, some former prosecutors on the other side of the aisle who, like me, would never, ever present to a judge a non-corroborated statement from a confidential informant as the basis for establishing anything. And so we're a little off topic, but I did feel I need to address my colleague from Georgia's comments about all of the alleged terrorists who are there are those who are supporting them to stay in. Nobody is supporting any member of a foreign gang to stay in here. We would just like to make sure that people are adjudicated and determined to be a member of a foreign gang by someone other than the President of the United States or a member of Congress. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Guest for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would like to yield as much of my time as she may consume to Ms. Greene.
Thank you.
Ladies recognized.
Thank you. I think my colleague across the aisle is very confused and maybe uneducated and uninformed of what a special interest alien is. SIA is a non-U.S. person who is based on an analysis of travel patterns, potentially poses a national security risk to the United States or its interest. Special interest aliens are people from countries identified by the United States government as having conditions that promote or protect terrorism or potentially pose some sort of national security threat to the United States. It's hard for me to fathom that anyone on this committee would be opposed to simply reporting the number of special interest aliens that Homeland, that our great men and women that served as Border Patrol agents, that any of our police, any of our ICE agents happen to detain, and it's just the number. We're just telling the American people how many. That's it.
Would the gentlelady yield for a question?
No, I will not yield. The Department of Homeland Security officials have publicly posted information about special interest aliens in the past, including the current Border Patrol chief and his predecessor. Custom and Border Protection already published similar numbers on its public site. For example, the terrorist screening data set. And just to go further, and this is always an interesting dynamic to me. On our side of the aisle, we trust the American people, and we believe they deserve transparency. They deserved the truth from the federal government, because it is, after all, that we swore an oath to serve the American people. And the American people are the taxpayers that pay all of our paychecks. They pay for this building. They fund this government, even though the government has plunged them into $36 trillion in debt and opened up the borders for the past 4 years and allowed it to be flooded with illegal aliens. And then the Biden administration gave them Social Security numbers. You see, this that we are trying to pass today and we would love to have your participation. We would enjoy and really would thank you for caring about transparency and providing information to the American people that so deserve it, instead of arguing back and forth and watching you all defend special interest aliens, defend terrorists who have come in our country, and defend dangerous, violent cartels who have been deported out of our country. I know too many people that have been murdered by cartels. I know too many people, and I know their families, and have watched them mourn because they have a family member that was killed by illegal alien crimes or murdered by an illegal alien or a cartel member. This should be a simple conversation. We are all Americans, and we serve this country, not foreign countries. And that should be a simple fact that we can all recognize, not have political disagreements about. Congress, by the way, has previously released information as it relates to special interest aliens through hearings and committee reports, including the October 3rd, 2024 report from the House Judiciary Committee titled "The Biden-Harris Border Crisis: At Least 1.7 Million Potential National Security Threats." DHS has an obligation to the American people to be as transparent as possible. We owe it to the American people to be as transparent as possible. This is not targeting some innocent migrant or someone that is seeking to be a citizen of the United States. We're talking about special interest aliens, potentially terrorists, people who are linked to terrorist organizations, people who share their travel patterns, people that all of us should not want in the United States, and the American people don't want them here either. This isn't giving their name. This isn't telling what country they're from. This isn't giving their address. This isn't saying where they work. This isn't saying anything. It's not showing their picture. It's simply saying how many came across the border each month. It's very simple, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentlelady yields. All right. So let me just say this. I want us to all debate this, but let's debate the bill as much as we can. I get it that we want to make comments about what's going on, but let's debate the bill, please. Mr. Thanadar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Greene. And I want to yield the rest of my time to Honorable Ranking Member Thompson.
Ranking Member, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you asked very simple questions about, does this bill only require numbers? And the author of the bill said yes. But that's not what this bill does. It requires other information more than numbers. Now, when this bill was offered last time by Ms. Greene, we tried to get her to accept numbers, and she didn't. Now she comes back with a different bill and tries to say it meant what we tried to get her to do last time. So clearly, the maker of the bill is not where it needs to be. I read the language that's in the bill. It says such numbers disaggregated by geographic regions of such encounters. Specifications related to whether such encounters were made at land, air, or seaports of entry, between ports of entry, or in the interior of the United States. Identification of any such nationalities or countries of last habitual residence that was covered nations. So in other words, it's not a number. You got to tell where they came from and all of this. And for the record, special interest aliens come to this country all the time. It's not illegal. So for whatever reason, we are conflating other issues with this. The department has the capacity right now to use its discretion in reporting this without this legislation. So all we're saying is, if it's numbers, will the maker of the amendment accept the fact that it only requires numbers, no country of origin or any other information as specified, and Democrats will agree to it. But it's not just a numbers bill. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Would anyone else care? Mr. Jimenez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be voting for the bill, but I'm not sure it goes far enough for me. And so what I'm probably going to be introducing some legislation that talks about historicals too, because the only way that we can determine whether there's been improvement in the southern border on this is what happened prior to this administration. And so I'm going to try to get numbers about special interest aliens entering unlawfully, or trying to enter unlawfully into the United States during the Biden administration and what's happened now during the Trump administration, and compare those numbers and see, you know, if there's been an improvement. Because really that's what we want to do as a committee, to make sure that there's improvement in the security of the United States. Ms. Greene, I'll be voting for your bill, but I know that I'm going to be proffering something different for historical data and see the differences between the two administrations. Excuse me? Yes, I will.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Jimenez, I think it's a great idea. I would just say that the more numbers we have, probably the better. We can show some kind of a pattern. The biggest attack we've had in the homeland was 9/11. It'd be interesting to go back a couple of decades to find out if there are any patterns here in terms of travel, terrorists, how they got in, and then we can have a good picture, putting the partisanship aside and focusing on national security.
So that sounds like a
Thank you.
bipartisan bill forthcoming. I like it.
Thank you. And with that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman yields. I now recognize, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the spirit of transparency and the efforts to measure. We have I say this a lot in Spanish, what's not measured cannot be improved. I do have issues with this bill because of what the ranking member has said. Making a lot of this information public might have the opposite effect of what we're intending. If our goal is national security, if our goal is protecting the border, telling the SIAs where we are intercepting them and letting them know, hey, we're stronger here than here, might actually lead to the opposite intended effect. I also share the concerns of the ranking member when they say that this just publishes as numbers. I mean, Section 2A3 says, identification of any such nationalities or countries of last habitual residence. So when I heard Ms. Greene say that it does not mention where they're from, I think that is entirely inaccurate. So for those reasons, I will be voting against. Now, I don't know if anyone
gentleman yield?
Yes.
You're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to emphasize what my colleague from Puerto Rico said. It would be one thing if it were just numbers. Then, if it were just numbers, we'd be talking about transparency to the American people, and realistically, it would have no impact on whether or not our homeland is safe, because we're not asking the department to gather more information on people. We're not asking them to do anything differently than what they're already doing to keep our homeland safe. This, of course, is not numbers, and the problem not just numbers, the problem is when you're adding in public reporting, there is a benefit to transparency for the American people. I fully agree with that, but there's also a tremendous benefit to the organized gangs who are trying to infiltrate our country. And I appreciate the lesson that Ms. Greene was trying to pass on to me, but as somebody who prosecuted organized criminal enterprises for 10 years, I can tell you that this kind of information only helps the enemy. It does not stop them. And it's bad enough that you're misrepresenting what your bill says, but it's even worse than the fact that the information that's being provided will help the enemy and will do nothing to help keep our homeland secure. So I wish that, A, we had an accurate representation from the sponsor of this bill as to what it is, And B, that if it were actually that, we'd be having a very different discussion. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Luttrell, you recognize.
I do, and I feel like this has come completely off the rails. Dan, I'm going to chat with you. I disagree. I think if countries are well aware and under the microscope and they know that we see them, that puts them in a different posture. Now, my colleague stated it was numbers. I don't understand. If she would have stated numbers in countries of origin, and DHS is the one that's doing the processing, as they have done currently and in the past, this just codifies legislation that says this is something that Congress wants. And it's not Congress, it's not Morgan that's down there pointing people out, saying, hey, look, you're obviously an SIA. It's us assisting DHS in amplifying our ability to defend ourselves. So I guess my question is the problem with, should it be just numbers, or why is it a problem with its numbers, countries of origin, where we're letting the American people like, hey, we are very well aware of the problem set. We are laser focused in on these areas. And I personally think that's a good thing. I yield.
Yeah, well,
Gentleman yields.
I think first of all, I think we have to distinguish between foreign governments and foreign terrorist organizations.
Okay.
Who are often different.
Will you yield? Okay, I forced
Your time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forced you. Okay,
Reclaim your time.
okay. Forgive my speech if I don't say. I mean the terrorist organizations that we are focused on, not specific governments and so on, or if that's included.
Right. Well,
And I know you're going to go granular on me here.
I'm not going to go granular because I think that you have to recognize a foreign terrorist organization is a professional criminal organization. They assume that they are under surveillance. They assume that they are being investigated, that they are being targeted. So by releasing the information that there is actual targeting of them does not give them any information that they don't already know. You're not gonna be able to say, oh, wow, they're looking at us now. We better be more careful. But what they are gonna get is...
That's exactly what will happen.
But they already know that. And what they will then learn is not anything that not any surprise that they're being investigated. They will actually learn how we are investigating and targeting them, which allows for them
I disagree. They will just know through the publication.
So
I'm sorry.
what we don't want to do is you just reclaim your time. So to members, all the members committee, right and left, I mean, if it's your time, you can reclaim your time.
Yeah,
So if you're reclaiming your time, it's yours.
okay, no, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we're not going to, this isn't a debate.
Well, my
Yield
frustration is
back
we're
or-
talking about a piece of legislation here, and again, it has come off the rails, so now our Democratic colleagues are totally against the Republican colleagues, and now we're in a fist fight in the middle of the committee, which...
No, we're not. They're making their points and you're making your points. That's what it is. But you have to do it by the rules of the committee.
Trust me, I would never want a fist fight.
yeah, all right. And I hate to say it, hang on, I reclaim. I just think...
All right, the order. You have a minute and 23 seconds, Mr. Luttrell.
I hate to think that we have gotten lost in the actual legislation that I personally think promotes good information to the American public and Congress. And I understand your perspective, sir, but as a former member of the military that did this for a living, putting them back on their heels and understanding that we're aggressively coming at them makes their tactics, techniques, and procedures fail. And then they have to start completely over. And then we continue to maneuver.
Would the gentleman yield for
Yes.
one comment? We are in agreement on this, that figuring out effective measures to put these organizations on their heels is critical. And that is where the department's energy should be placed, not on disclosing in various forms information that they already have, that they could publish if they thought that were effective counter surveillance and effective investigation, but instead to essentially create busy work that, yes, I'm sure the American people have an interest in this, But I don't think that the American people's interest in this will have an impact on keeping our homeland safer. So I would love to work on other ways of targeting these foreign terrorist organizations so that we can actually put them on their heels. This bill doesn't do that.
Yeah. I yield back, sir. Thank you.
Gentleman yields. Does anyone else want to say a word?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Higgins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield my time to the chairman.
Thank you. Again, I spent a number of years in a Tier 1 task force hunting terrorists. And I'll tell you, they don't like the bag count. Right? They hate it. It's a disincentive. If you put the numbers up, the scoreboard up, it's a disincentive. It's not an incentive. It doesn't publish any kind of how we're catching them. To push back on this bill is really, I don't understand it at all. And I hunted terrorists as a part of a Tier 1 task force for years. No, I didn't prosecute them. I hunted them to capture them, and in some cases, kill them. So from my experience, putting the number count up is going to be a disincentive. It's not giving them some ability to evade our detection in any way. And I appreciate the fact that Mr. Goldman recognized that they probably know it when we get them. Good. Let's remind them. Let's tell them every day, hey, we're catching more of you guys. And let's also let the American people know. And as I understand this bill, it would apply to Republican administrations and Democrat administrations, because it's a law. So I don't get it, but that's me. And I think, Mr. Jimenez, I'll yield to you since I have a little bit of time. If Mr. Higgins...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reclaiming my time, I yield to Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you to the gentleman from Louisiana. I just want to clarify something. Actually, what I wanted in this bill is actually in the bill already. So in the amendment, the first report required under subsection shall also include matters described in the subsection for the period from January 20th, 2021 to January 19th, 2025. So what I really wanted was this comparison. It was already in the amendment, so I'm good. And I yield back.
Thank you. Reclaiming my time. I yield to Mr. Knott.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Knott, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, if I'll yield the remainder to Ms. Greene, but one of the things that I think that we're trying to flesh out here, there obviously is a component that says the report shall include the overall numbers, the net numbers, but there's also line 17 of the draft I have, each report shall also include the following, and that's where it lists the geographic regions of such encounters, the specifications relating to whether such encounters were made in various areas of the country, and then the identification of any such nationalities or countries of last habitual residence. I'll yield to Ms. Greene to explain why that is shall as opposed to may.
Reclaiming my time, yield to Ms. Greene.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Thank you, Mr. Knott. I think it's extremely important that it does include this information, and that's why it's written that way. And I have to say that I'm honored to serve on a committee with multiple members here on this committee that have served our country and tracked down and hunted terrorists. That's something that I can't understand in my life experience, but I respect and I am immensely grateful for. And so are the American people. And to hear my colleagues who have done this as a job while they left their families in service to our country to defend the United States of America and protect us from terrorism and terrorists abroad, when they are completely comfortable with this information being released for transparency for the American people, I think that should give everyone full confidence that this is the right thing to do. This does not threaten our national security interest. It is, as a matter of fact, it keeps us safer. And I'm thankful for the comments and the expertise that has been said today on our committee. And Mr. Higgins, I yield back.
Reclaiming my time, and I thank the gentleman from North Carolina. I didn't want to recognize him as Representative Brad. So thank you for clarifying the spelling and the pronunciation of your name, sir. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. Does anyone else wish to make a comment on the bill or on the amendment? Mr. McKenzie, you're recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually appreciate the debate that we're having here today. This is the type of work that this committee should be doing. And we are considering very serious legislation, not just in this bill, but a lot of the bills that we're going to be talking about today that do have implications about our national security. And I think we as members of Congress and also the American people know that we are in a very vulnerable situation right now when we are facing not only foreign entities, but also the cartels, the terrorist organizations, all of these non-governmental entities that want to do harm to the American people and to our country. And this debate that we're having around the type of transparency and information that we want to have about what is going on at our border is a great discussion to have. Now, I disagree with my colleague from New York who said that this does not help national security and it puts us in a more vulnerable position, because I think the cartels, in my experience, being down at the border, like so many members of the committee have done, a lot of us have traveled there, but in talking to our law enforcement, they know that the cartels in many instances have already better information than we do about what is going on in the security of that border. And so I think that more transparency, more information is a good thing for not only the American people, but also those of us that are members of Congress that are going to be making decisions about where we should be moving resources, where we should be funding additional border security. And I think this legislation does that. And so, again, I appreciate everybody's input, everybody's thoughts today, but I would respectfully disagree with, again, the colleague from New York who is leading the charge against this legislation. I would support my colleague from Georgia and her initiative to pass this legislation, because, again, I think we all want more security, more transparency about what is going on at our border. This legislation does that, and really it's just the first step in helping us attack the challenges that are coming at America every single day. So I yield back, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again.
Gentleman yields. Does anyone else wish to comment on the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Hearing none, are there any amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute? Hearing none, the question is on agreeing to the amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by Mrs. Greene. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment of the nature of a substitute is agreed to.
Mr. Chair,
Recorded vote is requested. So there's no motion from the ranking member. The question is now on reporting the bill H.R. 275 as amended to the House with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to.
Mr. Chair, I ask for a recorded vote.
Gentleman requested a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McCall. Mr. Higgins. Mr. Guest. Mr. Guest votes aye. Mr. Jimenez. Mr. Jimenez votes aye. Mr. Pfluger. Mr. Pfluger votes aye. Mr. Garbarino. Ms. Greene of Georgia. Ms. Greene of Georgia votes aye. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Luttrell. Mr. Luttrell votes aye. Mr. Strong. Mr. Strong votes aye. Mr. Burkeen. Mr. Burkeen votes aye. Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane votes aye. Mr. Ogles. Mr. Ogles votes aye. Mrs. Biggs. Mrs. Biggs votes aye. Mr. Evans of Colorado. Mr. Evans votes aye. Mr. McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie votes aye. Mr. Knott. Mr. Knott votes aye. Ranking Member Thompson.
Nay.
Ranking Member Thompson votes no. Mr. Swalwell. Mr. Correa. No. Mr. Correa votes no. Mr. Tanadar.
No.
Mr. Tanadar votes no. Mr. Magaziner.
No.
Mr. Magaziner votes no. Mr. Goldman.
No.
Mr. Goldman votes no. Mrs. Ramirez.
No.
Mrs. Ramirez votes no. Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Kennedy votes no. Mrs. McIver.
No.
Mrs. McIver votes no. Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson votes no. Mr. Hernandez.
No.
Mr. Hernandez votes no. Ms. Poe. Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter votes no. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia votes no.
Are there other members in the room who wish to have their vote recorded?
How am I recorded?
Mr. Higgins is not recorded.
Higgins votes aye.
Mr. Higgins votes aye.
How am I recorded?
The chairman is not recorded.
Chairman votes aye.
Chairman Greene votes aye.
Clerk will report the tally.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there were 15 ayes and 12 noes.
The ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to without objection. The motion to reconsider is laid on the table.